There was once a poor little girl named Karen who had no proper shoes. In summer she went barefoot, and in winter her feet were red with cold. Her mother was dead, and the world had taught her early how sharp stones could feel beneath a child's steps. One day, an old shoemaker's wife made her a rough pair of red shoes from scraps of cloth. They were not fine, but to Karen they seemed beautiful. She wore them even to her mother's funeral, thinking more of their color than of the sorrow she did not yet understand. After the funeral, a rich old lady saw Karen and pitied her. She took the child into her carriage, brought her to a fine house, and gave her clean clothes, food, and a proper bed. Karen's old red shoes were burned because they were considered ugly and unsuitable. She was taught to read, sew, sit politely, and behave like a respectable girl. Yet beneath her gratitude lived a secret hunger for beauty and admiration. She remembered the red shoes not because they were good, but because they had made her feel visible when she had owned almost nothing. One day, Karen saw a princess pass by wearing delicate red Morocco shoes. The shoes shone like berries against the pale street, and everyone turned to look. From that moment, Karen could think of little else. She was no longer satisfied with plain black shoes for church and school. She imagined red leather, fine stitching, and eyes following her wherever she walked. The old lady, whose sight had grown weak, took Karen to buy shoes for her confirmation. Karen saw a red pair in the shop and said nothing about their color. The old lady did not notice. On confirmation day, Karen wore white, as custom required, but beneath her dress gleamed the red shoes. The church was quiet, solemn, and filled with prayers. Yet Karen's thoughts kept slipping downward. Were people looking at her shoes? Did they admire them? Did the red leather shine in the aisle? She tried to listen, but vanity whispered more loudly than the pastor. After the service, an old soldier by the door looked at her shoes and said they were pretty dancing shoes. He tapped their soles with his hand, and Karen felt a strange thrill pass through her feet. As Karen left the church, her feet began to move. At first, it seemed like a little step, then a turn, then a faster movement she had not chosen. The old lady called to her, alarmed, and the coachman caught her and lifted her into the carriage. Even inside, her feet continued to twitch and dance beneath her dress. The old lady was frightened and angry. The shoes were taken off and placed in a cupboard, and Karen was warned never to wear them again. But warnings are weak when desire has already learned the shape of a forbidden thing. The old lady became ill, and Karen was expected to stay beside her, grateful and attentive. But there was to be a grand ball in town, and Karen could not stop thinking of music, lights, and the red shoes waiting in the cupboard. She told herself she would only look, only step out for a short time, only return before she was missed. Quietly, she opened the cupboard and put the shoes on again. The moment they touched her feet, she felt both joy and fear. Then she slipped away from the sick room and followed the sound of music. At the ball, the red shoes carried Karen into the dance. People admired her at first, for she moved with startling grace. But soon the dance grew too quick, too wild, too powerful. Karen tried to stop, but the shoes would not obey. They carried her out of the ballroom, down the steps and into the street. She danced past houses, fields, and dark hedges. The night wind struck her face. She cried for help, but her feet only spun faster. What had begun as a wish to be seen had become a force that would not let her rest. The shoes danced Karen to the church. There, before the door, stood an angel in white robes, holding a shining sword. His face was grave, not cruel, and his voice seemed to ring through the stones. He told Karen that she would dance in the red shoes until pride and vanity were burned out of her heart. She would dance through darkness and daylight, through lonely roads and crowded places, until she became a warning to others. Karen screamed and tried to turn away, but the shoes carried her onward, and the church vanished behind her. Days passed in misery. Karen danced through mud, rain, dust, and thorny paths. Her fine dress tore, her hair loosened, and her face grew pale with exhaustion. Then she saw a funeral procession moving slowly along the road. It was the old lady who had taken her in, now being carried to her grave. Karen tried to stop, to kneel, to weep properly at last, but the shoes dragged her past the mourners. She understood then the full cruelty of her choice. She had left kindness behind for vanity, and now even grief was denied a quiet place in her body. At last, Karen danced to the house of the executioner, who lived alone at the edge of the wood. She knocked on the door and begged him not to punish her for a crime, but to free her from the shoes. Her voice shook with terror. She told him she could not enter church, could not pray in peace, could not stop moving long enough to become herself again. The executioner looked at her with sorrow. He understood what she asked, and how terrible the answer would be. Karen closed her eyes while the red shoes danced impatiently beneath her. The executioner did what Karen had begged him to do. The red shoes, still holding the feet that wore them, danced away into the forest, tapping and turning as if nothing human had ever suffered inside them. Karen was left behind, faint and broken, but still alive. The executioner made her wooden feet and crutches, and she began the slow work of moving without beauty, without admiration, and without speed. Every step hurt, yet each painful step belonged to her. For the first time since putting on the shoes, Karen could choose whether to move or remain still. Karen went to the parsonage and asked if she might work as a servant. She did not ask for pity or praise. She only wished to live quietly, learn humility, and be useful. The pastor's family received her, and she worked as well as she could, though every movement reminded her of what pride had cost. On Sundays, when others went to church, Karen longed to join them, but shame held her back. She sat alone with a prayer book, hearing hymns from far away, and wondered whether mercy could reach someone who had danced past every warning. One Sunday, Karen gathered courage and tried to go to church, but as she approached, the red shoes appeared before her, dancing in the path. She recoiled in horror and turned back. Another Sunday, she tried again, and again the shoes came tapping before her, bright and terrible. Karen understood that she could not simply walk into forgiveness as if nothing had happened. Her repentance had to become deeper than fear. She returned to the parsonage and prayed not to be admired, not to be comforted quickly, but to be cleansed of the pride that still trembled inside her. One quiet morning, while Karen sat alone with her prayer book, sunlight filled the little room. The angel appeared again, but now he carried no sword. In his hand was a green branch covered with fresh leaves. His face was still solemn, yet full of compassion. The walls seemed to widen, and Karen heard church bells as if the church itself had come to her. She bowed her head and wept, not from terror, but from relief. She had wanted red shoes to lift her above others. Now she asked only to be gathered into grace. From that day, Karen's heart changed. She no longer dreamed of people turning to look at her. She found peace in small duties, in quiet prayers, and in the kindness she could offer without being praised. The memory of the red shoes did not disappear, but it no longer ruled her. She understood that beauty becomes dangerous when it teaches the soul to worship itself. She also learned that mercy is not the same as forgetting. Mercy is the patient light that enters after truth has done its painful work. In Andersen's tale, Karen's suffering ends not in applause, but in stillness. The church bells ring, the sunlight deepens, and her soul is lifted beyond the room where she had prayed. The red shoes, once bright with vanity, are no longer the center of the story. What remains is a child who lost her way through pride, endured the cost of it, and finally found peace through humility. It is a severe tale, but not an empty one. Its warning is dark, yet its last movement is toward mercy.